Hello, and welcome back to 7 Days Inside Borderline. I'm Kyle Lincoln. I'm your host and a counselor in private practice based in Salem, Massachusetts. Today we're wrapping up our series on borderline personality disorder, or BPD. Today's episode is all about living well with BPD. We'll take a closer look at radical acceptance and values-based living and share practical steps for anyone looking to navigate life more effectively. Finally, we'll explore where you can find additional resources after this series ends.
Hi everyone, I'm Kellen. I work for Kyle at the practice, and if you've been listening since the start, you've heard us explore how BPD affects relationships, emotions, and day-to-day life. We've covered a lot, and in this final episode, we're going to tie those threads together. We'll talk about what to do next if you want to keep learning or need support. By the end of our conversation, we hope you have a clear sense of how to build a life that feels worth living, even with the challenges of BPD.
That's the goal. Today's episode isn't about presenting something revolutionary or new. It's about highlighting approaches and practices that have been proven to help people with BPD build lives that feel more manageable and meaningful. Not about eliminating challenges altogether, because that's not realistic, but about finding ways to navigate life with a sense of balance and purpose.
That's a good way of framing that. It's not about fixing yourself or reaching some unattainable goal.
Exactly. And we're going to explore this idea through a couple of foundational practices that are central to dialectical behavior therapy, which is one of the main therapies for BPD that we explored in episode 5, and to the broader conversation about wellness. Let's start with the first, radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is a cornerstone of wellness practices, and it's something I've seen transform lives. Let me tell you about a hypothetical person, Maya, who is struggling after a breakup. She kept thinking, this shouldn't have happened, and that thought trapped her in a cycle of guilt and anger.
That sounds pretty heavy, like a burden that won't lift. It's surprising how powerful a single thought, such as, this shouldn't have happened, can be in keeping someone stuck.
Exactly. One of the first steps Maya took after the breakup was writing down what happened in the relationship without adding judgment or blame, just the facts. At first, it was difficult for her to even look at what she'd written, but over time, she started saying, this hurts, but it's real. I can't change it. And that simple shift helped her to focus on what she could control, like setting boundaries with her ex or investing time in things that brought her a peace of mind.
So even just a simple perspective shift gave her room to breathe. It seems that once you acknowledge the situation as it is, you're freed up to decide what comes next.
And that's what radical acceptance is about. It's not pretending things are okay. It's about releasing the energy we waste fighting reality so we can focus on healing and moving forward. For Maya, it meant accepting her feelings and the breakup itself, and then using that acceptance to take meaningful steps towards wellness.
For listeners who might want to try this, where should they begin?
So let's walk through the process together. First, when you're overwhelmed, take a moment to pause. Notice what you're feeling, whether it's anger, sadness, frustration maybe. Just acknowledge it without judgment. You might say to yourself, this is what I'm feeling right now. Next, name the reality of the situation. Stick to the facts. Like Maya did, write them down if it helps. For example, instead of saying, this shouldn't have happened, say, this is what happened. Notice any assumptions or judgments, and rewrite the facts as necessary. By grounding yourself in what's true, you can create a foundation for moving forward.
I really like that actually, because it feels like that step alone is like you're cutting through all the noise of the what ifs.
Then, give yourself permission to feel the pain. Tell yourself, this hurts, but it's real. Pain is a part of life, and accepting it makes it easier to cope. And finally, choose one small action to take care of yourself in that moment. Maybe it's taking a walk, calling a friend, or practicing mindfulness. The key is focusing on what you can control.
Accepting pain doesn't seem very easy, but I guess it's not about doing everything at once, but making small, intentional choices.
No, that's exactly it. Radical acceptance isn't a one-time thing. It's a practice. And each time you choose acceptance, you build resilience and open the door to new possibilities in the future. And it pairs beautifully with our next topic, value-based living. Building on radical acceptance, let's talk about another important aspect of wellness, value-based living. For most clients, we often start with what I call maintenance skills, like accumulating positive emotions. So this is just a skill that helps you maintain well-being. In the short term, this might look like choosing to engage in things you find enjoyable and being mindful of them, whether that's a favorite meal or a walk in nature or even a conversation with a friend. These moments can be powerful, but as a life plan, if we rely only on short-term positive feelings, our lives can become self-focused and directionless.
That makes sense. Focusing purely on feeling good can be short-lived.
Yeah, exactly. Values help us to take a longer-term perspective. They guide us to think beyond immediate gratification and instead align our actions with what really matters in life. For example, a value might be kindness or creativity or family connection. Living in alignment with these values helps ensure that we're not just chasing fleeting emotions, but building something meaningful.
That sounds a lot like a grounding approach. Do you have any examples of how this works?
Yeah, of course. Let me tell you about another hypothetical person, Sophia, who felt stuck in a cycle of emptiness. Now, she was accumulating positive moments like binge watching her favorite shows or spending time on hobbies, but it really wasn't giving her a sense of direction, and she felt stuck. So we explored her deeper values, things like helping others, being authentic, and staying close to her family. Once she identified these, we began to plan her days around them.
What kinds of changes did Sophia make?
I think they were small but intentional ones. For instance, she started volunteering at a local shelter once a week, which aligned with her value of helping others. She also made it a point to have dinner with her parents every Sunday, which helped her to stay connected to her family. You know, these weren't massive shifts, but they helped her feel more aligned with who she wanted to be.
Yeah. So just even small things like having dinner with her family made huge changes for Sophia. She didn't have to completely overhaul her life.
Exactly. That's the beauty of value-based living. It's about taking small, intentional steps that align with your core beliefs and priorities. And when you're living in alignment with your values, it's easier to weather life's challenges because you're grounded in something bigger than yourself.
For listeners who want to get started with this, how can they identify their values?
Okay, so a good place to start is reflecting on moments that brought you fulfillment or pride. So ask yourself these questions. What was I doing? Who was I with? What qualities were important in that moment? Now write down your answers and look for patterns. You can pause here if you need to. Another approach is to think about people you admire. What values do they embody that resonate with you? You know, once you've identified a few key values, think about just one small, specific action that aligns with this value. For example, if generosity is a value, you might commit to a small act of kindness every week, like donating your change or just being generous with your time and energy. Let me give you a few moments to consider this for yourself.
Okay. So a moment that came to mind for me happened this week when I got to spend time with my roommates. We all have very different schedules, and sometimes I forget to check in with them and just ask little things like how their day is going. And so having time to have a meal together and chat and laugh, it made me realize that that's something I want to do more often. So maybe for this week, a challenge that I can do is text my roommates more often, see if there's anything I can get for them at the grocery store, little things like that. I think something I really value is my relationship with them and with people in general. That's where a lot of my happiness comes from. So I want to make that value.
Yeah, that's great. So I heard you go from a place of saying something happened, it was incidental, to I want to make it intentional. And value-based living is about creating intentionality in your choices. It's not going to remove challenges, but it gives you a framework to navigate any challenge with purpose. Now, we'll bring these ideas together as we wrap up this episode with some final thoughts on living well with BPD. As we wrap up 7 days inside Borderline, I want to emphasize that wellness with BPD isn't about achieving perfection or trying to erase every struggle. Rather, it's about exploring ways, such as radical acceptance and value-based living, that can help you maintain perspective and cultivate meaningful growth. While there is no fixed formula, these approaches can reduce the energy spent fighting reality and offer a clearer sense of direction. And over time, they may help create a life that feels worth living, even during tough moments.
I appreciate the focus on perspective and growth. Throughout this series, we've seen how small, consistent shifts, like acknowledging what's real or choosing to act in line with personal values, can gradually transform how we handle day-to-day challenges. It's not about instant solutions. It's not about perfection. It's about noticing what works and building on it, one step at a time.
That's a good summary of this episode, and in fact, a good callback to some earlier episodes in this series. Wellness is ultimately an ongoing process shaped by patience, self-compassion, and the willingness to adapt. Progress might be slow, but with practice, it does come. And if there's one key message we hope you'll take away, it's that you are more than your challenges. From emotional regulation to strengthening relationships, each tool we've discussed can create space for growth and healing without demanding that you become someone else. If you're looking to explore more, there are great resources available, and we've included a few of those on the website, kylelincolncounseling.com. And remember, this is just the beginning. Whether you've been tuning in since episode 1 or you're jumping in on this one, we encourage you to keep exploring what resonates with you. There's no single right path to wellness. Adapt the tools you've learned here and discover what feels most supportive to you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We hope our conversations have offered some hope, encouragement, and concrete ideas for your own growth. If you'd like to reach out with questions, share your experiences, or suggest future topics, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we're grateful for the time you spent with us. Thank you. Always remember that small steps add up. You're not alone, and there's support out there, from professionals to peers, whenever you need it.
We wish you continued courage and compassion on your journey. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, stay well.